Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Mapachian. This music resonates with me so much, and the new album is incredible. Hope you enjoy. Thanks. We're going to be diving into some BRUIT, less than or equal to. I don't know if you're actually supposed to pronounce that or if it's like the star at the end of the band Frost, if it's just a symbol. I don't know. I think I'm just going to call them BRUIT today, and y'all can correct me on that. The track we're looking at is The Intoxication of Power, and this is a live performance of it. This comes off of their new album that came out back in April called The Age of Ephemerality. Let's dive in and see what they're bringing to the table today. I thought we were in an unusual time signature, but I'm still counting 16 beats between chord hits. I like the drum pattern. It's a very interesting rhythmic pattern. I really like that last section, and I can't wait to talk about it. There's something sobering about this part, though. It plays around with many of the same ideas from the last section, just without the strength, without taking up as much space. Although we're certainly pushing towards that direction now, aren't we? There's something very sick, anxious about this, nauseating almost. I mean, part of it is the high pitch on the strings, but it's also the swirling note progression. That is so big. The low end on this track is phenomenal. Something very sinister here. And interestingly, it's like an adaptation of the nauseating section that we had a little bit ago. Something angelic.
There will be no emotions except fear rage, triumph, and self-abasement. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. There will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
I sometimes find it cliche when people refer to music as experiences. It's not just a song, it's an experience. But I think that this might be one of the times I find it to be rather accurate. And I think it's interesting. It's granted a special selection, but it is during this week of emotional resonance. The first reactions of every day is they're focused on songs with strong emotional elements, not just it is an emotional song, it is a sad song or whatever, but like where it is such an integral part of the listening experience of the track that you have to, or you're forced to feel the emotions of the song. This does that. This would have been a fantastic choice for this week as well. I'm glad we got it here because I'm in this mindset of emotionally engaging with music. Anyways, it's just where my mind is at this week. This isn't a song where I think I'm going to, and I know technically it's not a song. There's no vocals in it, but I'm going to keep using the word song. I think just colloquially it works. Hit me up in the comments, I guess, if you disagree with that. This is not a song where there's a lot of technical elements to it. I'm not really going to dive too much into the rhythmic component or chord theory or, melodic movement or anything like that. This is a song that to me primarily exists within the atmospheric and vibe area of music. It creates growing and ever-changing emotions. Now, granted, it does that through harmony. Yes, chord progressions play a bit into that, but I feel like it's so much more of what gets played when and how it sounds, the production side of things, more so than really anything else going on in this track. So we might be a little light on really getting into nitty-gritty technicality on this, but I do think that this is going to be a worthwhile exploration of how to craft a sound for maximum emotional resonance. Because I do think that they did a phenomenal job at telling a consistent story through this, and I'm going to be able to tie it back to the title by the end of this breakdown. Let's get into it. I view this song in three parts. We have the first section. I don't know how long it went. It was the big build-up. It was the first, 4 or 5 minutes of the song, taking us from the very basic drum start and then building into the strings and the brass and the guitar and the bass to its peak. And then it breaks down to our second part, which was where I mentioned that it started to sound a bit nauseating. There was something sick within the song. The third section would be the final 2 minutes or so of the track, kind of mixing the previous two segments and bringing the song to its largest moments, really hitting a peak that somehow, some way ends up with these very angelic chords, feeling very spiritual. Those are the three parts, and I want to explore them separately. So let's dive into the first part. It is the initial build-up. I love this. From the very start, I didn't really get too much information off of the opening chord progressions. I think it was a guitar that opened it up and just strum and allow it to ring out for 16 beats. If each beat is a single beat in 4/4, we're looking at 4-bar phrases of just holding out a note, not restrumming, just hit it once and allow it to resonate. And it takes some time. I initially thought that this was an odd time signature, but when I followed along with the drums, it wasn't. It's just 16 beats right there. It's just a really long time to allow a tone to ring out. We do have an interesting drum beat here, has a cool rhythmic pattern to it with some syncopation, some odd placements of accents. It creates something that drives forward, has a little bit of groove, but is primarily based around momentum. There is syncopation, there is variability of note length. It isn't completely static. It is a groove you can sort of bounce to, but its primary goal, from what I can tell, is to have momentum to the song, to provide a sort of movement in a direction that the guitar isn't giving us. The guitar just strums a note and is like, I'm cool here for like 10 seconds. Come back to me in a bit. And the drummer's like, nah, we're going, let's go. We got to go in this direction. We got this beat, we got this groove, we're heading here. Just really focused on movement through the song where the guitar isn't. This is a split idea here. It's a division of roles. Eventually, though, we begin to layer some ideas on top of this. We bring in some string, we bring in some brass. These two instruments create a very wild idea. It is the concept of echoes, reverberations, ripples, whatever you want to imagine this concept of being. We get an initial sound, and then another instrument will play that again. 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 But the thing is that all of these instruments, especially as we get further into the song, are massive. I don't know if it is the reverberations of where they are playing, which I don't know if the audio was pulled live from this performance. I'm going to assume it was. This is just the natural acoustics of this underground area they're in. It definitely seems like a place that sound would reverberate and bounce around wildly. Regardless, these instruments are massive. They're creating their own ripples as it is. There's so much reverb off of them. They can stop playing a note and it will continue to exist for multiple seconds. But then another instrument will play on top of that with its own reverberation, an echo of what came prior to it. The original idea is still persisting and it's already been replicated. This ends up building on itself quite rapidly. It doesn't take very long for them to reach a wall of sound, but if you have a keen ear, you will hear that there are still more implementations of that note or that little lick, 2 or 3 notes, and not really long runs, but just a recurring little motif that you can pick up on. Even after 5, 6 instruments and all of their reverberations are maxing out the room and just feels like it's so full, you can still hear another instrument echo what the first instrument had stated. I thought about this for a while, trying to figure out what it meant. And it wasn't until we really reached the peaks of this where the song begins to feel too large, too big, too loud. that it really began to dawn on me the intoxication of power. It is about how power can compound on itself, or at least the feeling of power, to be able to wield that over someone or something starts out as a small high. The more you redo it, the more that you do this though, the more that you wield this power, the more intoxicating it becomes, but it becomes a recursive loop of intoxication. You must go bigger. You must exert larger amounts of power over more people. That's the intoxication of it. Much like any addiction, the high of the action will not quite hit as hard as it used to, and you'll need to get a bigger dose of it. And to me, that's what this is. It is about power eating itself, constantly growing off of what it consumes. It is this recurring loop, echoing and bouncing off of itself, the clashing sounds, creating more warbles and disruptions in the sound waves, which continue to bounce off of every other sound wave in here. It is actions that are built upon of actions that are built upon of actions, all of them bouncing around and affecting each other, creating something large, monstrous through all of it. It sounds good though. There's something very, well, intoxicating about the music they create here. There is clashing going on. There's certainly a lot of sounds vying for power, not enough room for all of it, but it does create a satisfying wall of sounds. And honestly, the sheer size of it, the pitch of these instruments, there's something just, when I listen to those trumpets just belt out those really high pitches, I'm like, dang, dude, I'm impressed by that. I'm impressed by the power. But it turns, it twists, it contorts. We bring the energy down for a little bit, begin to refocus things. We've got to keep our heads straight on this. We can't let this take control of us. But it's impossible not to. Like any addiction, it's really easy to spiral, isn't it? And that's where things get sick. I really think that this middle section here is an exploration of misused power. Taking those same ideas, building up on top of concepts, recurring ideas, echoing down. The heavy reverberation here, covering everything, creating a massive wall of sound, but the music here is different. Lots of tremolo playing, tremolo bowing on the violins, but also a lot of tension and dissonance. There's also off to the left, I don't know what instrument it was, like 4 notes, just swirling, constant tension, no resolution. It's just a cycle. Not a cycle with purpose, not a cycle to help alleviate stress, just a cycle. All of this made me feel really uneasy. Does a fantastic job of turning what was something that I was impressed by to something that made my stomach turn. All the pieces are there, the same pieces from earlier. Same composition style, same idea of a build-up. But just a couple different notes. Just a little different perspective on things. A realization that you've crossed a line and there's no going back. And I think this was genius because at a point I was like, oh, this is good. You know, we took something that looked alluring and now we have shown a different side of it. It's a good place to wrap the song up. And then I noticed we were only about I don't know, like 8 or 9 minutes into the recording process here, which meant the song was probably in the 7 to 8 minute range. It's like, oh, we still have some time to go. What are they going to do with this? Because this feels complete to me. That's the final section. The peak of the song, the biggest moment of everything. All of this noise and tension and churning actually does sort of resolve out. It's even larger than ever. So many sounds, so many instruments at such a volume. You listen to the drums and they've kind of backed off too, not necessarily in intensity, but in complexity. We kind of have a pretty standard rock beat going on here. Just something to build upon. Now that I think about the statement made at the end of the song, it even kind of sounds like marching. Ideas locking into step. I think part of it is a realization. If you make it past the line, there's nowhere to go but down. And sometimes down can feel like up if you lack perspective. And I think that's what the ending of this is. It continues to feel off, unsettling for an outsider. You listen to the end of the song and it's no longer impressive at its size. It's kind of disgusting. But there is still a massive element to it. And eventually we have these triumphant sounds kind of returning back to a twisted version of the impressiveness of that first section. All perspective is lost on this person. All that matters is the power, and they have it. They have so much of it, and it feels good. Anyone outside of them, anyone outside of their little box can tell that this is unhealthy. They can't. They're too close. And I think this is where those angelic chords come in. At a certain point, after you've pushed past any sort of morality and you just seek out power, you begin to feel like a god. I really think that's what this song is about. A little taste of some power, having some authority over even the smallest, tiniest thing at the very beginning of the song. And the gradual growth from there, continuous accumulation, not over minutes, days, weeks, or months, but over years. The transformation of someone into a monstrous form, into a self-proposed god. All because the allure, the feeling of having that, was more intoxicating than anything else. Impossible to ignore, especially for someone with an addictive personality. Now, I've talked about this all from the perspective of a hypothetical person, but imagine it's not a person, and I think this is where the final lines, the spoken part, comes into play. Not about a person, but about a group. Not about some control, but all of the control over everyone. A call to arms to fight back against any group that would look to oppress. Yeah, I found this to be rather evocative, emotionally engaging, and phenomenally performed. I have no idea how they could go around this idea of building this song in this way, but I'm really glad they did. It's art at the end of the day, and it's phenomenally composed, created, performed, produced, conceptualized. So these are just my thoughts on BRUIT's The Intoxication of Power. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said? Correct me on if maybe I was mistaken somewhere. Do you have your own perspective or opinion on this? Please put all of that and any other thoughts you might have down into the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.